Welcome to another Garage Talk on the road. I'm with Triny Willerton. This interview is brought to you by Blue Rub. Thanks to Blue Rub for helping sponsor these. We are in awesome Chautauqua Park, west of Boulder. Little crispy day. Thanks for joining us, Triny.
Thank you for having me, Bill.
Yeah, this is going to be great. We just met by your house down the road and walked up to this historical place in Boulder and Chautauqua. Flatirons are kind of to our left. You gave us a little history when we were walking around. You said this was started by some professors from Texas back in the early 1900s, right?
Yeah, that's what I read, and they have this beautiful auditorium, and in the summer they have this amazing concert series. So, whenever this whole pandemic thing is over, we have to come back and yeah, they had it was really an interesting selection of artists because they had a lot of classical, obviously, but they also had Katie Lang. They had artists that I didn't even know they were touring anymore. The Indigo Girls.
That was what I was thinking of, the Indigo Girls.
Yeah, like, oh, okay, that's awesome.
Yeah,
so,
and this is just a few blocks. You come up here a lot to run and hike and
yes, I love
bring the
coming
kids,
out
right?
here. Yeah, and my puppies. I hike with my puppies on a regular basis, every day.
Well, I'm honored to catch up with you. It's been a while, and you've been so busy. I mean, your self-motivation, if you could put that in a bottle, you could be a billionaire. Because it's just incredible.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that and maybe where that comes from a little bit. And we want to introduce you as the person that runs the It Could Be Me organization. It's a nonprofit, or soon to be a full-on nonprofit, hopefully. And I know where you're working through some of that. And you and I met basically due to a crash that you had, and people said you should talk to Triny, she has a story, and I'm like, what story? And then we got together and you shared that story that became the real story, and I was super honored to have a part in that, and that just really launched you into this whole role of an advocate. Talk about that.
Well, I had never, ever, I just assumed, I was one of these people that navigated the world just assuming that life was fair and that if anything bad happened to someone, that as a society we were going to look out for each other, and that was just a thing. That's just, bad people are not going to ever get away with stuff, and good people are there to protect each other. But when the crash happened, I learned that there were so many things I needed to change. And like you said, I'm a very driven person, and I just, I guess one of the catapults for all of this was the fact that I felt so fortunate and so blessed to have survived, and not only that, but to be lucid and to somehow be able to do the stuff that I used to do, and to get my to watch my kids grow up, and the same day to a year, a person died exactly on that spot riding his bike. And he never got to tell his story. Right. And, I think that he had something to do with me surviving. And I always have felt that I kind of have him with me, and also that I owe him, that things have to change, that, his life was, that things don't have to be this way, and that all of us have every right to be out there and not have to be afraid. And if you want to go and ride your bike, why can't, or if you want to go for a run, you shouldn't have to, be thinking if you're going to come back or if something bad's going to happen to you. And I think that's where everybody comes in. I think we all need to look out for each other. And when all of these things started coming together in my head, I realized that, that our individual voices are so powerful. And it was just kind of getting that message out there.
Well, let's get people caught up a little bit who are listening to this.
Yeah.
So this was 2 years ago that you were in this crash. Not quite 2 years ago that you were in this crash, correct?
Correct.
Or 3.
2. It was 2018.
Yeah. 2008. So it'll be 3 years coming up in June. In May, I guess. And so you were riding your bike eastbound on Nelson Road, and you were attempting to go left onto 65th, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And the story was that you were riding in the shoulder on the right, and that you veered in front of a car to make a left.
Mm-hmm.
That was the story.
Correct.
That was originally reported. And then the reality was you were in the middle of the road trying to turn left. You signaled to turn left.
Mm-hmm.
And this car came up around on your left side, had crossed the yellow line,
Yes.
and hit you as you were making a left-hand turn.
Yes.
Right?
And I still don't understand what his decision-making process was. I mean, I don't understand why he would have chosen to, get on the other side of the double yellow and attempt to pass me the way he did. Because he would effectively be going into oncoming traffic.
Right.
I really don't get it. So, and, I mean, I don't think I ever will. But unfortunately, when the crash happened, they took me to the hospital before the police could get there. So I never had an opportunity to talk to the police. And a lot of how this gets reported back has to do with what the police report says. And initially, I mean, they didn't really have a chance to corroborate any part of the story. They just had that. And a reporter made a phone call.
Yep.
And whoever picked up just read off the piece of paper. It wasn't anything against me or anything, but while I was at the hospital, eventually somebody told me, and I started looking on social media, and another part that is really important about It Could Be Me is this community outreach aspect, because I think it's really, really hard to prepare to go through a crash scenario. And if I wouldn't have had the people that I had surrounding me, I would have made a lot of mistakes that would have really been detrimental moving forward,
Right.
Legally. So I had people holding me back. I couldn't say anything, Bill. I had to just be quiet. They told me just focus on healing. I was in the hospital for 6 days. And so that whole time, I kept reading all this stuff, and I kept seeing all of my friends and all my teammates just supporting me and saying there's absolutely no way on earth that she would have done that.
So tell me what the spectrum of emotion. Were you mad? Were you pissed? Were you hopeful? Were you grateful? Where were you in that whole spectrum?
I was really disappointed that people would think that I would be able to do something like that. I felt very frustrated because I couldn't speak up and kind of not defend, but make my friends' comments more valid by having me reassure them. I felt extremely grateful. So in the big scheme of things, I mean, Nigel told me at one point, don't worry, because the truth will come out in time. So just don't worry. So, it was very frustrating, but at the same time, I knew that I was going to have a chance to talk, and I knew what had happened. So, I at that point, I had been riding my bike for about 8 years and ridden with a ton of people because I love to ride my bike. And so, people that knew me knew.
I mean, from our standpoint at 303, we learned a valuable lesson with that, because we picked up the story on the daily camera that had reported that basically you just weren't looking and turned left in front of a car. Yeah. And I'm like, that seems really weird, but
we didn't
it
know
could
each
happen,
other.
right?
Yeah.
And so we just regurgitated the story from the Boulder daily camera. And frankly, that changed the direction of 303 a little bit, because I said, never again. Yeah. Am I going to just regurgitate a story without knowing the story?
No, thank you. Yeah, I think that's super important. And there's so many positive things that have happened because of this crash. That's another one. I didn't even know about that. But that's amazing.
And same thing happened in Adelaide. The false report comes out. Yeah. And then it changes the whole dynamic of how you recover. Yeah. And so I want to talk about how that transformed into It Could Be Me. But before we do that, let's talk about you a little bit. Let's talk about where you grew up and what brought you to Colorado and how you met Nigel and some of the things that are a little peek behind the curtain.
So I was born in Mexico City, and I grew up there until I was 12. And my mom was born in Arizona. She's American. And she married my dad. My dad's Mexican. And so when they were getting divorced, she was kind of afraid, so she decided to bring herself and her children to the States. And so we moved to Texas. And I grew up there. I went to middle school there. I went to high school there. I started college there. There was 1 year where I went off and studied French. I studied in Paris. So I was living in Paris for about a year. Okay. And then there was, there's always this thing. I love music, and I was a performer at one point. I used to play the bass, and I used to sing. And,
You played the bass?
and the piano, a long time ago.
Huh.
And so I had this thing where I felt that I had to go back to Mexico City to do that, and so I did. So when I turned 18, I went back to Mexico City, and I started recording. I started doing a lot of stuff, and I did a lot of demos, and then I went back to school, and I started music composition. And then my band got signed. I mean, this is like like a totally different life, it seems like. But
Yeah.
so I was in this band. We were all women, and I played the bass and the piano. And we were signed to, back then it was Polygram Records.
Wow.
And then it turned into Universal. And then, yeah.
Like Spice Girls, or what were you guys playing?
No, it was like pop rock.
Really?
Yeah, I'll show you. It was really cool, and it was really like an incredible experience. I remember just thinking how blessed I was and how surreal everything was, because I was having the time of my life. It was so much fun, and I was getting paid for this.
Did you tour around the world?
We toured in Mexico and some of the U.S.
Really?
Yeah, and then
Are you on iTunes?
Yeah.
And what's the name of the band?
Oh, I'll tell you later.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I met my ex-husband, and through the same label, he was signed as well, and then I started managing their band.
Huh.
And yeah, and I recorded about 4 or 5 albums with them,
Wow.
and they're still around, which is really interesting. And they're doing really well. So it's a totally different life. Then I got married, I got pregnant, and things are getting really, really bad in Mexico City. I mean, there are things that just, I used to hear about anecdotes of the friend of the friend of the friend. Now it was like my dad's wife and my little brother. These things were happening too. So when I got pregnant, I was like, well, I think I'm going to go back to Texas with my mom. Because I cannot even imagine being pregnant under like this stress, and it was just not safe. So I went to Houston, and that's where all my kids were born.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, sadly, things with my first husband didn't work out, but we're still very, very good friends. He lives here in Boulder,
Oh, wow.
so the kids get to see him all the time, and we're all friends.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
that's really cool.
then through that, after I had all my kids, it was interesting because I had never had issues with my weight. I was like one of these really lucky people that people hate, that never have to worry about anything, and just took everything for granted. I just didn't even think twice. And then I had babies, and with every baby, like, my body did not know how to make babies unless it gained like 50 pounds. And I'm not even joking. So I was like, I respect, and I'm all for all types of bodies and shapes, but it was just not something that I was happy with and not comfortable. So I joined this community of women in my gym who were all on the same mission, the same journey. We had a dietitian, we had a coach, and they had this really well-established program where we trained 3 times a week with them, and then we were responsible for the other days. And it was basically a support system to lose weight and to get healthier and fitter and stronger. And within like a year of that, I was signed up pretty much to my first try.
Okay.
It was all through the same gym.
Was this in Texas? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, because I had lost all the weight, and it got to a point where I was just like, there has to be more than just coming to the gym. This is really boring. And a friend of mine suggested that I do a turkey trot with her. And I was like, oh, wait, you mean, but that's outside. And there's bugs, and it's hot, and it's gross. And no, I don't want to do that. I was like, no, you have to do it. It'll be fun. So I did that, and I loved it. And then within a month of that, I had started to train for my first half marathon. Then I did another one, and it was with the same coach that someone recommended. And he was like this super hardcore Xterra athlete. And so there was no whining, no baby stuff. I mean, it was just like, if you're going to train with me, this is what it's going to be like. I'm like, okay. But, he got me ready for Nigel, because Nigel's just the same, so.
He got you ready for Nigel. Like Nigel's a storm coming or something.
Yes. No, I mean, when I met Nigel, he was training to do Ironman Texas. He was guiding a blind athlete.
Okay.
And that's how we got to know each other.
Oh.
through this whole process of training, I ended up doing all of the training for Ironman Texas with him. And people didn't understand why, if I wasn't going to do the race. Everybody was really, really surprised. They're like, wait a minute, you're not racing? And I'm like, no, I'm
So
doing...
when was this about?
2011.
Okay.
So I did my first Ironman in 2011 in Florida.
Okay.
But they did Texas. And so, but it was such a cool process. And, you know, you get to see all these other things of, you know, your boyfriend or whatever, you know, of your partner. And yeah, he was really amazing.
So is Nigel a really instrumental part of you? Obviously, he's a really instrumental part of you getting into triathlon and Ironman, or no?
Oh, no. I met him. I had already signed up for Florida when I met him.
Oh, okay.
And we met at a race. We met at a transition of like a local tri. We both signed up super late. And so we were like in the worst possible spot.
Yeah.
And it was just him and me. It was really bizarre. And yeah, and so we talked a little bit then, and then didn't see, that was in August because it was like the day before my birthday. And we didn't see each other until December. And he was getting ready. We bumped into each other at a bike ride because we were both riding for the same team in Houston. And we met, I think, like a week or two before he went off to Ethiopia. And he did this run across Ethiopia. They did 20 consecutive marathons to fundraise to get schools.
Wow, 20 consecutive marathons.
And it was a group, I think, of about 10 athletes. And they fundraised $250,000.
Wow.
All for Ethiopia and getting schools going in. So yeah, so I met him. He went off to do the run. We would communicate through Facebook sometimes. The connectivity over there was really bad, but then he came back and he started asking me out, and I was really sick. I had like not pneumonia, but I had like a bronchitis, and I was just sick. So he asked me out 3 times, and by the 3rd time I said, okay, if I don't go out with this guy, he's gonna think I really don't like him or something. I'm just making it up. And so we went on a bike ride with Brandon, with this athlete, and he was like, and I remember Brandon telling me, Trini, you sound like you're really sick. And I'm like, I am, Brandon. I am. I kept coughing. But anyway, so yeah. And after that, we never stopped seeing each other.
And here you are a few years later in Boulder.
10 years later.
10 years later in Boulder. You've done it. How many Ironmans had you done before your crash?
7.
7.
Yeah.
And you were trying to qualify for Kona, right?
Yeah. So when we moved here, you know, I hadn't ridden my bike since I was 14, but it turned out to be a really big strength for me. Like, it was something that I just was good at, and I don't really know why, but I just loved it. And I spent, you know, Nigel also loves to cycle, so we were always riding, always. That's what we did. It wasn't like we went to the movies. No, we went on bike rides. That was our activity.
Right.
So, and we were both really, really happy. All our friends, I mean, it was funny. Our wedding was like full of triathletes and cyclists. I mean, that was, and so they were all gone like by 11 because everybody had to train the next day. It was very funny.
This is the lowest alcohol content wedding ever. Probably.
Absolutely. And I had to choose the date of our wedding around races to make sure that people were going to be there. There was no race on that particular weekend, and I'm like, okay, good. That's the date. Yeah, it was funny. So I loved triathlon. I loved everything about it. I loved the sense of community. I made like the best friends I ever had. And then we moved here because Nigel was at a point in his career where he could just work from home. And so we started looking around. We had both done Ironman Boulder in 2014.
Okay.
And we just loved it. I mean, he would come back more because of his industry, and you know, I got to come with him a couple of times, and yeah.
So that was really what drove you here. It wasn't a job per se. It was just that you love this town and the triathlon experience you had here, and then so you come here, and we, most probably listening, realize there's a big triathlon community in not just Boulder but in Colorado. Talk about how you assimilated into that community and what you loved about it.
So it was really hard, actually. Because in Texas, like, I was friends with most of the women in my age group. I mean, those were my best friends. And when I moved here, I don't know where the women in my age group are in Boulder, but they're not in Boulder. They're like, I don't know, they're like in Littleton, they're in other like suburbs, but they're not here. So it was really difficult. I would go to, like, I started swimming at CU, and I was doing masters. And I remember talking back to my coach in Texas, and she was like, "Oh, you're in masters. You must be making a lot of friends." And I'm like, "Well, I'm at CU Boulder, and my coach is turning 22 tomorrow. And yeah, I'm swimming with like 20-year-olds. So they're all really sweet, but
Right.
so it was really difficult for me to find my tribe. I made a lot of mom friends because of my kids. I made a lot of friends just through Nigel and his business friends, but it was really, really difficult. Eventually, I started meeting more and more people my age, and and everything was good, but it did take some time. And because of what you said, it was just hilarious. I would go to masters after like a year. I went over to CAC, and my master's class, I had the pros. I mean, it was just
Dave Scott's did CAC with his pros?
I did Dave Scott, I did Michael Lovato,
Yeah.
I did, so it was just a group. Not only were they legends that were teaching you, but the people in the pool also, and it was just hilarious. I'm like, well, I'm never going to get to that lane. I'm like, I moved to the very first and slowest lane, and I was very just vigilant. I eventually moved over a lane, but it was a totally different reality. And what I can tell you is that the pros that I've met have been unbelievably sweet and just super welcoming. There's nobody that's ever made me feel like that I don't belong because I'm not fast or something ridiculous like that. Everybody's, welcomes you in a really, really sweet way. So.
And did you get on that Coor team before the crash?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you've been on that team for a while.
This will be my 5th year.
Talk about that for a second.
So Coor comes in, I love what they stand for, and I love this idea of having women supporting women, and just, I wanted to be part of that so badly, and I tried, but they were only allowed to, bring in a certain number of people each year, right? So I tried, and I got turned down. I tried again, and got turned down. It wasn't until the 3rd time that I tried that I got in. And I was just over the moon, because by this time I had already made friends with some of the people on the team. And I think that's what it is. I think a lot of people get the wrong idea about how people get accepted into certain teams. I think it's really understanding what the team's all about and having some sort of interaction with people and really getting to know the people that are in the team as well. So after that process happened, it was right when I moved to Boulder, actually.
Okay.
It was 2016 was my first year. And everything started coming together with my training, with my nutrition, with everything that I had been working in Texas for. And somehow I would see a lot of success in certain areas, but then there were other things that weren't happening. So in my Ironmans, I would thrive on the bike, but then I was done on the run, right, at a certain point, because my nutrition didn't come together. Or sometimes my nutrition was great, but then I had a mechanical. I mean, something always happened. So when I got here and the altitude, I don't know, everything was just right. My kids were in a great place in school. We were really comfortable here. And so for the first time ever, I said, I think I can qualify for Kona. And so that year I did 3 or 4 70.3s, and I started getting higher in my last 70.3. I came in 2nd.
Okay.
It was in North Carolina, and I qualified for South Africa, I think.
Okay. That makes, yeah.
Yeah. And then I went to Cozumel, and I remember I gave my coach about 8 weeks. This was with a super
Cozumel
solid.
to do the half or the full?
The full.
Yeah.
And with the ambition of qualifying at Cozumel.
Which year was this?
2017.
17. Okay.
And so, so I'm sorry. Looking back, so 2016 we got here in the summer, so I started adjusting. 2017 is
That
the
was
year.
your year.
Yeah, I made All-American. I was in a really, really great place. I came in 4th in Cozumel. I did a 10:46.
Wow.
And I felt, it was this, my kids were there, everybody was there, and in Mexico you only podium 3. So I missed the podium. And then there were only 2 slots, and we missed the slot. I mean, Kelly...
You're right there. You're feeling it.
Yes.
You're on the edge.
So I remember I came back, I had this conversation with my coach, and Kelly Pua, who now moved back, but she used to live here, And she was just about to move here, actually, 'cause she wasn't living here. But I remember talking to Kelly, because Kelly was a beast. She was amazing. She was one of these athletes that that is superior in every single leg. And she came in third, and I came in fourth in Cozumel. And I remember calling Kelly and saying, Kelly, you need to sign up for Boulder, because that's what we're going to do. You're going to be living here, and I'm going to be living here. And when they see your name, people are not going to want to sign up. So that's going to be your tactic. She's like, you're so sweet. I don't think that's true. And I'm like, it is absolutely 100% true. You'll see. Anyway, so we both signed up, and that's what I was doing. That was my mission. You know, my kids were in school, Nigel was at work, and I devoted every single moment that I was not with my kids to my training.
So here you are. So 2017, Cozumel, which is in November. Mm-hmm. Had the winter, whatever. You're starting to get really into it. May's coming around. Boulder was in that year. Was that the year it was moved from August to June, or it was still in August?
It was June.
It was in June. So you were like peaking, getting ready for Ironman Boulder in June of 2018. That was the year it was super hot, actually. I remember that because I did it. Yes. That was a horrible. So you're out training, you're riding the course, because that was the course, and your life changed. Yep.
And I mean, I don't think that I would change things just because of all of the amazing things that have happened ever since. And, you know, I really do feel that this was something that, you know, unfortunately that had to happen. But, you know, thank God I'm still here. Thank God I'm here and talking to you. And there's so many people that have not been that lucky. And I think there's so much work to be done, and someone has to do it. And maybe that someone is me.
So you hit, severely injured, hospital 6 days, could have easily died, all of the things. We talked, I think it was a couple weeks into June. Was that before or after Ironman Boulder when we actually
Probably
talked?
before.
I think it was before, just before though.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you were able to finally actually speak about what happened. You got your legal set up, whatever. Yeah. And then we'll talk about that. So what was the process you were going through, and talk about maybe what you were trying to do legally at that point.
So I learned a ton. So first of all, and I think this is something that everybody would benefit from knowing, when you're in a crash like that, the first proceedings that you have to go through, or the first thing that you're going to tackle, is your criminal case. Then it's your civil case. The criminal case is the state against the person who hit you. It is not Triny against Mr. who decided to overtake me. So that in itself was really difficult for me to understand. And once I understood it, it was really difficult for me not to be emotional about, because...
Let me stop you real quick. Does that mean that, did you have to advocate for that to become a criminal case, or did the DA decide to do it herself?
No. That's just the way it happens. I mean, it's a criminal case because it was like something that happened on the road, and it's in the state of Colorado, and so it's the state against this guy who committed an offense. It's his ticket, basically.
Based on the original report, it would have been your fault, but then it became his fault. And that's when it became...
Oh, yeah. Bill, the guy didn't even get a ticket when he left the scene of the crash. Like, he just went home.
So how did it become a case then? At what point?
Because when the police came and talked to me, and I told them what had happened, it was like, oh, I understand now. They had the point of impact on the westbound lane. They had pictures. They had evidence. They had witnesses. And it didn't make any sense what this man was saying to them. I mean, if I would have flung in front of him on the eastbound lane, there would have been some proof of that. There's nothing. Everything was on the westbound lane.
Right. Okay.
And so when I explained to them, I was in the process of turning when the next thing I see is his grill, then it all made sense. So then they go back and they cite him.
I see. Okay.
And, another thing that I learned, so careless driving is a very common offense or a very common citation, because the next one up is reckless driving. And from what I've been told, reckless would mean malicious intent somehow. And it's really, really hard to prove.
Right.
So everybody out there that gets a citation like this will be a careless driving citation. Mine was careless driving causing bodily harm. For
Okay.
that, the guy back then would receive 4 points on his driving record.
And that was it, right?
Yeah, and like some ridiculous fine.
And now, is that what he ended up getting charged with?
Mhm.
Because that was before the new law that you helped. We can talk about that later, but so
Yeah.
that was the max at that point. And then if you wanted to pursue him civilly for your own damages, reimbursement, whatever, that was on you.
Yeah.
Got it.
So that is the difference, and I think a lot of people aren't aware of that, and so they start with this expectation and with this totally different mindset. And I think once you understand, then things make a lot more sense too. But in my case, the whole proceeding or the whole case took 13 months, only because this man refused to admit guilt. And I refused to. I said, well, he's only going to get 4 points. That's all he's going to get. The guy completely changed my life. He almost killed me. And he can't accept 4 points?
Right.
No. So I refused. And we went through, I think it was 40 days. It was just what had happened. I mean, for whatever reason, they kept getting reassigned. And it wasn't until this woman DA came along. And I promise you, Bill, she got everything that these other guys had been trained to get done in months. She got it done in 2 weeks. We had a court date. We were there. I got to talk to the judge. The judge was very appreciative of all the work that we had done. And she said, now I have something to work with. Because unfortunately, because this new law wasn't in effect when you got hurt, I can't do anything about that. But moving forward, and I'm like, absolutely. That's why it was so important to me.
Okay. So then you ended up with a day in court on a civil case.
No, criminal.
Okay.
Criminal. Yeah, no. I haven't. Stuart, my lawyer, is the one who is looking after the civil case, and I think we're about to settle. But
So that's still ongoing. Okay. 3 years later.
yeah.
Almost.
And the thing is, with a civil case, I don't think. You'd have to talk to someone more knowledgeable than me in respect to why he did the things he did or how things are progressing. But I can tell you that one thing that we were very fortunate about was that I had an umbrella insurance. I had an underinsured motorist coverage because Nigel got it because he thought he was going to get hit. Never in a
So
million
that helped
years.
carry some of the expenses of your whatever. I see.
Oh yeah, and I think everybody that rides a bike should have this coverage. It's really it varies from insurance company to insurance company, but it's such a small price compared to the benefit that you'll get if you're ever in this horrific situation.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're working through these different proceedings and the court, the criminal, the civil. When did the light bulb come off to say, and become a mission for you to make a difference in another way, which led to It Could Be Me?
So in the interim, I must say that's something that really did kind of show me how powerful things could be in social media and how big of a voice each person has, including me. When I got back from Cozumel, I shared with a friend, how disappointed I was and, that I was going to work really hard and all this stuff. And on the 1st of May, this application for the Inspirational Woman for Women for Tri comes out. And she calls me and she's like, oh my gosh, I just saw this thing and you'd be perfect for it. And I'm like, are you talking about the Women for Tri thing? And she said, yeah. And I'm like, I'm not inspirational. No, there's no way. That's for people that, I don't know, are overcoming real challenges. I haven't really done anything. I just lost weight and I'd love to inspire women to be involved in triathlon, but really I don't think I'm worthy. No, you're worthy. And we're going to put together an application and I'm going to help you. I am a writer.
Prior to the crash. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm a writer and, we're going to get this together. So she did such an amazing job. We got together for coffee once and she asked me everything. And then suddenly it was like, I want you to get testimonials and we're going to do this and that. And that. It was just like this thing. And then I got hurt. The application was due May 10th. And my crash was May 8th. So May 9th, I remember her calling the hospital. And I just, at that point, I couldn't even move within my bed. I literally could not move. And I just remember telling Nigel, please tell Dana to submit the application. And he was like, what? Application for what? I'm like, for Kona. I'm like, what? It's May. I'm like, just tell her, please. She worked really hard. I don't think it's fair. So she did.
With but the application didn't bring up the injuries.
So
the
what
crash.
she did say, she added this tiny little paragraph at the bottom, and she said, my friend is in the hospital. She got hurt. She got hit by a careless driver, and, I don't know. She wants me to submit this application, but if anybody can do this, it's her. So she submits the application. I go back home and, start working with tons of doctors, therapists, and, everybody's just, I am in this very grateful state in my life where everything I celebrate, it's not about what could have been or what, I know people can be very resentful and you took this away from me. No, to me, it was like, oh my gosh, I can brush my hair. Oh my gosh, I can walk to the bathroom. It was just celebrating each and every little thing. And it was just the way I was living. And so then one day, there's this phone call. And I just let it ring because I don't recognize the number. They're calling me from like Chicago or something. I'm like, I don't know anybody from Chicago. So I just let it ring out. And then Nigel's looking at me, and it was breakfast time. He's like, you have to get that. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, no, you have to get that. So he gets the phone and he dials back and he's like, here, you need to talk to these people. I'm like, who? So anyway, so it was one of my core teammates who used to be on the Women for Tri, panel, I guess. I don't know. And she was calling to tell me that I had gotten the slot.
Wow.
That if I wanted the slot, it was mine. And it meant that I had to fundraise $25,000 for Women for Tri, and that I would get to race Kona that year.
In 2018.
Yes. So at that point, I found out that Nigel had been talking to all my doctors, and he had talked to them prior to this phone call to tell them that my doctors had agreed that I could do it. Because he didn't want to say yes until all of them gave me the green light. So then I went back to the doctors, and they were like, okay.
This is what? June. When did you get this phone call?
June.
June, middle of June,
End of June.
End of June. So it was basically a month after, a little more than a month after your accident. Mm-hmm. You then would have had July, August, September to get ready for this race.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. And so some incredible people stepped up. I mean, I remember I had always had this dream of working with Eni Jones. And just never, for whatever reason, had never been able to connect with her. And Eni reached out to me. And because of Eni, I think I was able to finish that race. And because I had to relearn how to swim. Don't forget, I mean, I had 12 fractures.
Yeah, when did you start riding again?
I don't know, like July. It's all indoors. I was also going to therapy, with a PTSD specialist, and so she was also instrumental. But I had a couple of rides outside, but the most of my training was done inside. But in my defense, also Cozumel, because of the weather here, like 90% of my cycling was done on Swift.
Yeah.
Because it was just not weather. I mean, I had to do, I don't know how many centuries for Cozumel, and
well, you were at least in shape when you got hit. Obviously.
I was built, and that's something that's super important for me, for people to understand that the reason I recovered the way I did was because of how strong and how fit I was. And every single one of my doctors said that was the reason. My body went through this horrific thing, but it was kind of, I always thought that all of that was like my extra Ironman.
And you raised money for Women for Tri, but that was It Could Be Me hadn't started yet.
Oh God, no,
right?
no.
So you went to Kona with the Women for Tri based on an application that had nothing to do with the crash.
No.
It was a sort of an added benefit almost, you had a story now that was even more powerful. And how did that go, raising the money, and how did Kona go?
So that's where I kind of started realizing like I said, how powerful one person can be and how much of a difference you can make in other people's lives. And I fundraised $32,000. I started making videos, ironically.
You're right. I was going to say, maybe this is how you... Did this start to plant seeds, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started making all these videos, just, telling people about my progress, telling people how I felt. I would take people with me to the pool. I would take them to PT. Every single thing that I had to celebrate, I celebrated with them. And and then finally the day, like I said, with Amy was just unbelievable. I mean, she has like these really unconventional ways of like making points and making you feel certain things and to reactivate certain things. And so I would take the videos up to with Amy to the pool, and today is my first 100 meters and things like that, and it was just really cool. And then when the time came, I felt every single minute of that course, Bill, it was like just gratitude. I was happy. I was just elated. Every single thing was just the best thing in the world. I mean, it was nothing bad. Everything was incredible. And I obviously on the run was when it hit me. And there was a moment in the training where I thought that maybe I wasn't gonna be able to run the whole thing. So I started thinking, I'm like, well, there's no way I'm not gonna do this. So maybe I can talk to them and maybe they will let me use like a wheelchair. Maybe I could do it in a wheelchair. And I remember talking to Ironman. They're like, well, you would have to enter a special division.
Oh, right.
And I'm like, well, let me just keep trying. And it wasn't until one time I did this 20-mile run-walk combo that I knew it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay, so you
fine.
do Kona. You finish. I think I remember seeing you. I was there when you finished.
Yeah.
You finish Kona. You raise all this money for Women for Tri, which has its own empowering message and is great. But it was kind of about you getting through Kona and you, and then when did you say, wait a minute, there's more to this?
So I came back, and when I left, I had this DA that was so passionate about my case, and he was really, like, not excited, but he really wanted to be, like, have justice be served, right? And then I came back to find out that he's been reassigned. And I have to make this new person fall in love with my case and make him see that it's not just like another folder on his desk. So I start learning more and more, and then finding out all the stuff that we talked about with the criminal case, and just stuff started, like, I don't know, it just made me really upset, and I knew that we had to change stuff. And at that point, I had never been an advocate, had never done any sort of work of this.
Well, you kind of did for Women for Tri. You kind of advocated.
Yeah, but it was different. I mean, I guess that was just kind of sharing what I would typically do in a regular day, but I had no idea how a bill becomes a law. Like, I mean, I learned that in school, but not firsthand.
Right.
I didn't know any of those things. I didn't know, how many people were out there. Oh my gosh, that's like even embarrassing. But I belong to Bicycle Colorado. I really didn't know what they did.
Right.
I was just, no, they're good people and they work for cyclists. So yeah, I'm part of that. I had my share of the road plates and but I really had no idea. And so that January, I went to this seminar with Rachel Joyce and Dana Platten called Brainess. And they asked us to kind of just draw out like what we wanted to do that year and start setting goals, little goals, big goals. And I wrote down as my big goal that I wanted to change the law, and I wanted to do something to change how people acted on the roads. That was like basically like my big goal. But I didn't know about it could be me. I didn't know how I was going to do that at all. I just wrote it down. And then one day I was driving my little boy to school, because at that point he went from riding his bike every day to me being terrified of letting him ride his bike. And it was only a mile. So I drive him every single day. And I remember looking at a cyclist and thinking, oh my gosh, that could have been me. And I said, oh, wait a minute, that was me. That could be me. And that's where it came. I mean, I was just driving.
What do you mean, listen? Just a cyclist that was riding your bike.
Yeah, somebody that was on the road, and I just looked at him. And I don't know if somebody got too close to him or it was just like a close call of some sort. that I just said, that could be me, or that was me, and that's how it all. So yeah, and then I got this call from Bicycle Colorado. I was so incredibly lucky. They needed someone to testify for Bill 175.
Okay.
And I said, of course. I was terrified. I had never been in any sort of proceeding, like, at all. Like, never been in a courtroom in my life, never been to Congress, never been at anywhere. So for me, it was a totally different experience. But I said no. I mean, I almost didn't go because I was so scared.
This was in 2019, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I was so no, yes, it was 2019, sorry.
Yeah.
And so, but I went, and I took my little boy with me. I took Amelia with me, and I carpooled with Adelaide. So Adelaide kept reassuring me. She said, don't worry, it'll be fine. They're all just people. Everybody's just
This
people.
was in front of you testified to a committee or to the whole
Congress.
The state legislature?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the state capitol.
Okay.
So there were about 24 of us. Only 2 of us were cyclists. The rest of them were all sorts of vulnerable users. So there were motorcyclists, there were people that had been injured permanently, disabled people. There were pedestrians. I mean, there were all sorts of people.
And so this was the vulnerable user law that was eventually signed by Governor Polis that was going to put a bigger hammer on when somebody hits somebody, a vulnerable user, not just a cyclist, a pedestrian.
Any vulnerable user.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that that whole process taught me so much. I mean, I got to testify, and then once that was done, I got to see how the bill went from one stage to another, and how it had to be amended, and the verbiage, and all of these things that just seemed to me kind of trivial, but at the same time were so impactful because that allowed the bill to move forward and move forward. Then I got called again to testify. This was before the House, and there were only like 4 of us.
Okay.
So I testified, and again, after that, it was just like, well, what happens now? What happens now? They're like, well, now we're really close. We just have this one other step, and we'll see what happens. So at one point, they told me that I could help if I asked people to reach out to their representatives. So I found out how to do that. I started sharing the website where you could get who was your
representative. So by now,
representative.
it could be me. It was a thing, right?
No.
It still wasn't a thing?
No.
Okay.
No. So this is just me trying to learn and trying to figure out, how to do stuff and how I could get this thing that was so important to me and to so many people, to become a reality. And so I started sharing it on social media. I printed flyers. I would go to races and hand out flyers with, please, look up your representative. Please make sure that you vote for this, or ask him to vote for this. And so then at one point it made it, and it was just sitting on the governor's desk.
Right.
And I was invited to this event, which is just surreal. It's just the way It Could Be Me works. It just, things like that happen. I was invited to this event, and it was a fundraiser for the governor's birthday.
Okay.
And I got to talk to him.
Okay.
And I mean, I don't know. I don't know how impactful my conversation was, but it felt really good to me that at least I got to tell him how I felt.
Right.
And then a few weeks after that, the bill was signed.
And that was at a bike shop.
And they invited me.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's a great picture.
It's amazing. Yeah, so it was just like this whole thing came full circle, and I felt that, my crash had not been for nothing. It was just...
So you go to this bike shop, the governor signs, and It Could Be Me is where now?
Nowhere.
Still nowhere.
Nowhere.
This is summer of 2019.
Mm-hmm. May 29th, to be exact.
Oh, was it? Okay, that
Yeah,
was in
May
July.
29th.
Okay. May 29th.
2019.
The bill is signed. It Could Be Me is still in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Not even a name, really, kind of, but
Yeah.
sort of.
But no.
And then
yeah.
what launched It Could Be Me?
So then my daughter's studying at SCAD, which is the School of the College of Art and Design in Savannah.
Okay.
And so she's here for the summer, and I keep having these conversations with her, and I'm like, Charlie, I feel like I need to do something. And so we start coming up this idea of, I'm like, who could help me? I want to make a video, and I want to tell people what happened, and I want people to, I think that if more people, because I started doing a lot of research, and I started finding all these studies that showed that a lot of drivers were no longer seeing cyclists as human. We were
Right.
just like these bugs, this like obnoxious things that were just getting in people's ways. And so when I found that out, I said, well, maybe if they saw me in a video, they would understand, right? I mean,
Right.
nobody's not going to understand. And then I had the call to action. It was not only my story, but I wanted people to share their stories
Right.
and then share it with their friends and families. Because I understood that most of the people that were going to be watching my video were going to be athletes, and they were all going to want to like have this, not be the reality. Everybody wants people to respect each other because we're out there and we're living this, right? But when those people start reaching out to like their moms and their dads and Uncle Bob, and maybe Uncle Bob has an F-150, and maybe Uncle Bob sees a cyclist, and when he sees the cyclist, he thinks of his niece. It's like, oh,
Right.
that's someone's niece, and has that aha moment, right? So that's what Charlie helped me do. We filmed this. I started calling friends and asking them to make short videos
Yep.
to include in this very first like reel.
Just a good selfie, right? You're just, I'm Bill,
Yep.
I did one with Rich and and you started getting people just doing it.
Yes, but the first time, like, to introduce it to the world, so I had like 3 or 4 people do the video. I sent it back to one of Charlie's friends in college. He did a lot of the editing, and he was really great. His name's Robbie. So he sent everything back to Robbie. And through the summer, we kept sending material back to Robbie. And Robbie at one point said, when do you need this by? Because I am falling in love so much with this project that if you don't tell me, it's never going to finish. I mean, it's never going to end. I could just keep adding stuff and making it better, and I keep having these ideas. And so just give me a deadline. So we did. And on July 29th, I think, of 2019 was the very first day when I posted it. Within a week of that, we had 24,000 views
24,000 views.
on Facebook.
Wow.
And so I remember that was like right before my birthday, and we were out of town, and I just kept getting all of these videos and all of this feedback, and it was amazing. And at that point, I just knew that I was never turning back. And just things started falling into place. Like when I got back from the trip, we started doing more and more and more. We started growing. These phenomenal people from Wisconsin reached out to me and asked me if I had a website. I'm like, no. Like, well, we can help you. We'll host the website and we'll design the website for you. And I'm like, really? And yeah, like 2 or 3 phone calls later, the website was born. I mean, it was just
So it's all been very organic.
extremely.
Not even that much planning in some ways. Just one thing's led to another. You got people do videos. I remember you were in Kona in 2020 asking,
2019.
Mark, or no, 2019. And you had people doing videos that, Mark Allen and other people, and you had Governor Polis do a video. Like, how many videos have you now had sent to you? And
Oh, tons. A lot.
Thousands.
Well, I don't know if thousands, but yes, a lot of videos. And I think it was getting this, I think people needed to share their stories. And I think that it worked like a twofold. It gave us the opportunity to share our message, but at the same time, it was very liberating for people that made videos. It's like giving that power back to the person and just saying, dude, I'm just a mom, and it could be any of us. Just look out for me, and it was really that positive, very, just try to kind of, what is the word in English? I can't think of the word. But just kind of identify with the fact that, yeah, it could be any of us out there, right? And the thing with Kona, so everything starts coming together. It's really interesting because, yes, I get all these videos, and at one point it dawns on me that I need to go to Kona. I need to go back, and I need to get all these people involved. In the beginning, I didn't want to get pros involved, and I didn't want to get, like, celebrities involved. I wanted it to be just people that were like you and me, just
Right.
people out there, moms. I wanted it to be something that people didn't get intimidated about, that they could just see anybody else doing it and just feel comfortable doing it. At one point, it dawned on me, because I had a video from Mike Riley.
Oh, right.
And when Mike did the video, it was almost like before and after Mike Riley. And I realized then, because the number of videos I got after Mike was just outstanding. And so, and the response and the feedback. And so that's when I said, okay, well, I need to get more people like Mike involved.
Yeah.
Like people that other people look up to, people that, people will say, oh, okay, Mark Allen did one,
Yeah.
And well, the best way to do that was to go to Kona. But of course, at this point, I have zero budget. I mean, I haven't even like come up with a t-shirt. I have nothing. And so I go up to Nigel. I'm like, Nigel, guess what? Kona's coming up. And he's like, yeah, and? I'm like, well, I think this would be a great opportunity for it could be me, and da-da-da. And he's like, Trini, and I told him like the week before Kona. And so he was like, Trini, you're never going to find a hotel. And you're never going to find a flight.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, can we try? And he said, okay. Nigel used to travel more than anybody I know. So he had all of these points like on hotels and all these points on for United. And so he looks up on United and he's like, oh, wait a minute. There's a flight and I can get it with points. I'm like, really? With your miles? Like, yeah. I'm like, well, that's amazing. Like, well, yeah, but we're never going to find a hotel at this point. I'm like, okay, well, let's try. And yeah, he called the host hotel and we got a room in the host hotel, which is like, which is almost like unbelievable. Yeah. At the Marriott, and all for points.
That's great.
So I traveled with miles and stayed there for points.
Huh.
It turns out a lot of people cancel like the last week.
Sure.
And
yeah.
people don't realize that.
Good tip. Pro tip here. If you want to get to Kona, wait till the last minute.
Exactly. And so then there was no excuse. So I packed up my bags. I didn't have any media credentials. I didn't have anything. I just like packed up my bag. I knew all my core team was going to be there. So
Sure.
I didn't feel alone, but I went on my own. And so I got there and I worked on my elevator pitch. It went from like, I had a little bit more time with some pros, so I had like 2 minutes. Other times I just had to say it like in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
and just, I kind of did some research, found out where they were going to be, and there was not one pro that said no.
So how does that change things for you? How did Kona change things for you?
Oh my gosh, it was like eye-opening to me, and I think to everybody that was kind of following what was happening, because it just let everybody know that all these people that they looked up to, they had all been impacted by this, whether it was personally or by someone that they really loved. So there was no hesitation. There was like, sure. There were 2 people that were very, very difficult to get the video only because of how popular they were. So we had to go to like this special parking lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that was only because of that. And so we had to organize it in a different way. But the rest of the guys, it was just like, hi, I'm Triny.
So how is this all? So we've had It Could Be Me, and the mission is to humanize cyclists and to get people to, when they see cyclists, just be more aware, to be more kind, give a little extra room, to whatever. How is it, in your opinion, all of this momentum that you've built, where is it going and how has it changed the narrative of road safety?
So that's something that, there's 2 questions. Like the first one, the growth has been unbelievable. I mean, we now have 127 ambassadors all over the world.
And their mission is to what?
So when I started the ambassador program, it was pre-COVID, and the expectations were totally different, right? So our life was completely different, obviously. And so I had 3 tiers, and each tier had to do with the amount of time and commitment that you could give us. So for example, one tier was you would be able to be involved in policy change, and you would be able to host bike rides and host education sessions, whichever way you proposed. I mean, we were open to whatever you were able to do, but it was the most involved. There was the second tier where you could do some of those things, but you were going to advocate more on social media. And there was a third tier where it was pretty much social media exclusively, and just moving the dial whichever way you could. At this point, I removed all of those tiers,
Yeah.
and I have, I understand. We all understand. We know that things are very different, even now, like from state to state. I mean,
So where does It Could Be Me fit into the big pie of People for Bikes, or Bicycle Colorado locally, or Cyclist Community locally? How does It Could Be Me play in that sandbox?
I think we're all friends and we're trying to achieve the same thing.
Right.
I think that my perspective is different, even though it's the same. I think the human aspect that we provide is it's like essential for all of these other nonprofits, because they're working on different angles, right? And our element is just vital, and having people really be vocal and share who they are and trying to appeal to other people out there, I think that is really powerful. So we can partner with everybody, and
Because
that's,
you're not as much of a fundraising mechanism as maybe some other organizations, is that right?
yeah, not for now.
Yeah.
Our idea, I am in the process, like you said, of establishing a 501c3. So we will officially be a nonprofit organization. And when that happens, I mean, when there's specific things that we want to fundraise for, we will. But I am a partner. I'm an ally. I think that, and I think that's the key to success. I think that all of us need to operate under that understanding that we are all here for each other, and that when we all work together, we can accomplish amazing things.
So is it fair to say that perhaps It Could Be Me makes the pie bigger?
Yeah, for sure. And my end goal is to make it a national campaign where you see It Could Be Me on buses, on billboards, on TV. That's why the video for me was so important. This PSA that we created this summer, that was something that I fundraised for like about a year.
Right.
And it was just this idea I had in my head, and understanding that one of the differentials of It Could Be Me has to do with the videos, right? And that the video aspect is just crucial. So I wanted something that was really high quality that I could use to go into different platforms and to reach more people. So
Let's maybe wrap up here.
It's
So we're getting
cold.
cold. So you've had this pretty interesting life with the growing up in Mexico, the move to the United States, the musical thing, all of the advocacy, all of the, your own personal mission of becoming the best athlete, the best mom, the best woman, the best wife. And now you have this bigger umbrella of trying to change the narrative of safety and cycling. And what is Triny Willerton the most proud of in her life?
oh my gosh, probably my kids.
Yeah.
But everything. I mean,
Is there any accomplishments that they're all different, I realize.
Yeah, I think Kona was amazing. Kona, just the whole entire thing, crossing that finish line for me was just knowing that as humans we're capable of everything and anything. You just have to work really hard, and the appreciation of everything that my body went through, and being able to just say, yeah, I'm still here,
Yeah.
I'm not giving up. With It Could Be Me, every day is this huge sense of accomplishment, because every day something different comes up, and there's new ideas, and there's new things that we want to accomplish, and so that's like a never-ending thing.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. As an athlete, probably Cozumel.
Yeah, that sounds like a great race.
Yeah. And then I don't know. As a wife, I mean, it's hard keeping everything together, and balancing stuff. So yeah. But
Well, we're going to be anxious to see what happens in the next couple of years. I mean, it's incredible to me that how much has happened in such a short period of time, really.
thank you.
And I'm always amazed. I always tell people, gosh, if you want to see somebody kicking some butt around here, look at Trini and how hard she works to you don't even have to know exactly what she's just, if you just follow a little bit, you're like, wow, these things just keep happening and keep happening, which is great. So thanks for spending time with us.
No, thank you, Bill, and thank you for always being so supportive. It really has been. I mean, I think you've been instrumental in this whole entire thing. And thank you. No, for sure.
Okay. Well, thanks again.
Oh my God, it's so cold.